Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Succinct Psychology, or as we like to call it, Succinct. My name is Jaia Hendrickson, and this video is going to be a continuation of my last video on Chapter 3 in Principles of Social Psychology. So, social psychologists define stress as physical and psychological reactions that occur whenever we believe that the demands of a situation threaten our ability to respond to threat. We experience stress when we find ourselves in situations where we're not sure what to do or whether we'll be able to adequately cope. Stress is accompanied by increases in arousal. So when we experience stress, our heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, all these things increase. And then our body also begins to secrete adrenaline and other hormones. The experience of stress likely had positive aspects for human beings from an evolutionary stance. Because when we were attacked, afraid, or concerned about our well-being, the body signals us that we need to react. And the stress response is one of those signals. And general adaptation syndrome refers to the three distinct phases of physiological change that occur when in response to long-term stress. And those phases are alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. So we see here in this picture, it's a diagram of general adaptation syndrome. So on the y-axis, we have stress resistance from low to high. And on the x-axis, we have phase 1, alarm reaction, phase 2, resistance, and phase 3, exhaustion. So how it works is the person starts at about mid-range for stress resistance. The stress occurs, the resistance to that stress lowers while they're mobilizing resources to respond to this stress. Then it gets into phase 2, which is a resistance phase, where you're enduring stress for a long period, you're coping with the stressor, and then finally, if you're enduring stress for too long, you'll reach the final phase, which is phase 3, the exhaustion phase, where your reserves are depleted and you're no longer adequate with dealing with that stress. All right, the experience of stress creates both an increase in general arousal in the sympathetic nervous system and another even more complex system of physiological changes through the HPA axis. And the HPA axis is a physiological response to stress involving interactions among the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands. So the HPA response begins when the hypothalamus secretes hormones that direct the pituitary gland to release the hormone ACTH. And then ACTH then directs the adrenal glands to secrete more hormones. Those hormones are norepinephrine, epinephrine, and cortisol. And cortisol is a stress hormone that releases sugars into the blood to help prepare the body to respond to threat. So we see here in the picture, we have the hypothalamus in the brain send signals to the pituitary gland, which then releases ACTH, which has the adrenal glands in the liver release hormones such as cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. So Sheldon and colleagues demonstrated experimentally that repeated exposure to threats and stress can increase susceptibility to the common cold virus. And what this revealed to us was that there's a causal link between psychological stress and actual susceptibility to disease. So to begin this experiment, the researchers had adult volunteers fill out several questionnaires about important and significant stressful experiences in their lives. Then the researchers administered nose drops into each of the participants' nose. The control group, which were the luckier group, received a placebo saline solution, and the experimental group received a solution that contained the cold virus. And so over the course of the next week, the participants were examined daily by a nurse. And so within the control group, all who were exposed to the placebo saline solution, none of those participants got sick. But among those that were exposed to the cold virus, 82% of them did get a cold. And furthermore, within the experimental group, the participants who reported enduring long-term stressors, particularly those who felt like they were underemployed or they had enduring interpersonal difficulties with their friends and family, well, they were significantly more likely to get the cold than those who, say, had short-term stress. So we see here in this picture, it starts at increase in stress, which moves to increase in cortisol hormone. We come down to cortisol acts as an immune suppressant, and that suppresses the effect of the immune system to fight off infections, making you more prone or more susceptible to diseases and sicknesses. All right, our everyday interactions with the environment that are essentially negative are what are known as daily hassles. I'll say that again for you guys one more time. Our everyday interactions with our environment that are essentially negative are what are known as daily hassles. And daily hassles can also create stress as well as poor health outcomes. And events that may seem rather trivial, such as getting in an argument with a friend or family member, or getting cut off at a traffic stoplight, those can also produce stress. And one researcher found that medical students who were tested during rather than several weeks before their school's examination periods showed lower immune system functioning. And other research has found that even minor stresses, such as having to do math on an experiment, which that would stress me out, I'm not a fan of math either, even those can compromise the immune system. So see here in this picture we have top 10 daily hassles. A survey of middle-aged adults revealed the top 10 daily hassles. So we have things such as concerns about weight, rising prices, too many things to do, property investment and taxes, and physical appearance. So these are just some examples of daily hassles that everybody deals with. And these things can produce stress and give you poor health outcomes. Alright, so the fight or flight response is an emotional and behavioral reaction to stress that increases the readiness for action. And on average, men are more likely than women to respond to stress by activating the fight or flight response. The arousal that men experience when they're stressed leads them to go on the attack, usually in an aggressive or revenging way. Otherwise, they'll retreat as quickly as possible to the safety from that stressor. So there's the fight or flight response in them. Women, on the other hand, are less likely to take a fight or flight response to stress, and rather they're more likely to take a tend and befriend approach. The tend and befriend response is a behavioral reaction to stress that involves activities designed to create social support and networks that can provide protection from those threats. And this approach is also self-protective because it allows the individual to talk to others about her concerns and also as well as exchange resources, such as childcare. So overall, the tend and befriend response is healthier than the flight and flight response because it doesn't produce the same elevated levels of arousal related to the HPA, and that includes the negative results that accompany increased levels of cortisol. So you see here in this picture, we have on one side the fight or flight. When in trouble, suspend everything non-essential and get yourself ready to fight or run away. And then on the other side, we have tend and befriend, which is when in trouble, protect your loved ones and cooperate with others to stand your ground and survive. Alright folks, before we get into how to feel better and coping with negative emotions, I'm going to end the video here. But I hope you learned some stuff about stressors in Chapter 3 in Principles of Social Psychology, and I'll see you guys next time.